So we are finishing, we're really finishing about Gen Z tonight. I'm not going to talk much about Gen Alpha. I'm just going to tell you kind of what's on the short horizon that I'm seeing with Gen Z and a little bit of Alpha. But this mess of a picture is going away. Here we go. Come on. There we go. Okay, so what are you supposed to do after the class? You need to buy the book. I mean, honestly, I think the best application, if you're like, if you've loved this at all, the next application for you would actually just be go buy this book, start reading it, and start applying it. How can I be a faithful church member in a church, especially like downtown? In Nocatee, we have, at Nocatee, I think the numbers in the area of Nocatee, it's I think 55% 55 plus, and 45% young families. So those are like our two that we're always grappling with and thinking about. But downtown, there's a lot more diversity, from the youngest of ages to the oldest of ages. There's a lot of diversity. And so I think this would be a great book for you to pick up, to buy, and to keep studying generational crisis. That's something that our church, I think, it can really help our church, that we have members who love every generation, including their own, but every other generation as well. So we've talked about, in this class, the greatest generation, the silent generation. Pastor Trevor talked about those in the boomer generation. I started us off with the Gen X generation. Millennials, we finished last time, and we introduced Gen Z. And just to recap a little bit of what we talked about with Gen Z, I don't want to go too deep into it because it's a lot, and I could keep talking about it for hours, but it's this dependence that the Generation Z, the Zoomers, have on iPhones that really distinguishes them from every other generation that's gone before. I would say the real only difference between them and this next generation Alpha that is coming up is that if you think of Zoomers as the iPhone generation, Gen Alpha is going to be the iPad generation. That's the difference, right? Is like young kids, my kids' age, are running around with a hand strapped to a tablet and a big headphones on, and that's the way that mom and dad can sit and have a meal. I mean, that's the future. And so, but Gen Z is this iPhone generation. They're the first experiment with what does it look like when you start giving people, especially young teenagers and sometimes like 8, 9, 10-year-olds, phones. Like what happens when we start doing that over long periods of time? Well, we talked about that last time, that the phones are changing you. They are listening to you. They are influencing you. And this is not conspiratorial. It used to be 25 years ago, right? I would have sounded like a crazy nut job. But these things make money off of you in listening to you and trying to understand you better, so it can push more onto you to keep you on it, to keep you on the platform, to keep you notified, to keep you thinking about it. And the last part we left is that we talked about all the inner workings of that. I won't go into that anymore. Is that we really, like, the priming of this generation is for AI. That's the next stage. We've had AI. AI is really, artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. It's just simple. When you think about notifications or the algorithm or these even more basic things, that's AI. It's this artificial intelligence helping you think. It's just getting more and more and more advanced so quickly. I mean, 2 years ago, I was hearing about ChatGPT, and now I use ChatGPT pretty much every day. I use it a lot. I was a very early adopter. I think it's a really great tool. It can also be dangerous, but it's a very great tool. And honestly, after 2 years of being introduced, actually more than that, 3 years, I mean, my life has just changed because of this thing. Like, it's just a weird thing. I use Grammarly to check my spelling and my grammar and my texting. That's AI. So you've got this generation that's ready for the next stage, way more than any other generation. And we talked about most of their parents are Gen X, and there's some young, older millennials that are their parents as well. And their parents, remember, Gen X is this generation. They're the last analog and the first digital. I would say millennials were digital natives. Gen Z is now the last digital, the first experienced AI users. Like, that's where they're at. So it's kind of interesting. Millennials are sandwiched between these two last generations, last with something and first with something. And so that's a really interesting place to be, and that just means Gen Alpha is going to be in a situation where they have AI all around them. I want to start going into something. These are more experiences that I've had with just being around Gen Z for a long time. Okay, I've been around older Gen Z about 8-9 years ago when I started ministry. I'm with the younger generation and now even older Gen Alphas now. And I want to talk about this idea of depressed and unimpressed. Okay, they are a depressed and unimpressed generation. And what do I mean by that? Well, the stats on their generation are really bad. Okay, so the stats, I'm going to use this term. I don't mean it psychologically, but the stats on mental health, whatever that means, whatever that nebulous term means, I really just mean anxiety and depression. The stats on that are really sad for this generation. Very, very, very sad. They're the most anxious generation and most depressed generation that has ever existed. And they are, beyond that, that influences everything. And we've talked about this. I think that comes back to technology. I think that's the source of it. I think that's very clear. It's the only major difference between the teens today and the teens 100 years ago is that we shove technology in their face like no other generation that's ever existed. And so what do I mean by depressed and unimpressed? I actually think one of the things that is really interesting about this generation is that they are lonely, longing, and lost. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Now, every generation is lost to some degree, right? Like, lostness is a problem that through the gospel we are seeing that overcome. But what do I mean by this? I mean lonely in the sense of they are just lonely. Imagine, last night, my wife and I were up at like 3 a.m. for some medical reason going on in our house. It's not a big deal. No, everybody's fine. It's whatever. But I have young kids, so like people are up and down through the night. It's just crazy town. I just want to sleep through the night. Everybody else wants to distract me, apparently. And so I'm up at 3 a.m, okay? So, and I check my watch every time because I'm like, I just want to remember this moment. It's terrible. And I want to go back to sleep. And when you're up that late at night, okay, imagine when I was a college student, when I was a high school student, I didn't really stay up that late. I like sleep. I really enjoy it. When I was a college student, all my friends were staying up really late, and we lived in the dorm, so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to stay up late now, and that's going to be me. And we'd go out to Taco Bell at 2 a.m. and destroy our intestinal systems, and that was just the life. But imagine you're a high school student, and you're staying up late every single night. Sometimes even there's teens out there that will stay up all night long on social media, on technology, on these things. Well, the night is the most lonely time. Like, even if you're not on your phone, it's just lonely, right? Like, it's starting to get dark out, and every one of us, like, it is a little strange for you to be out, right? Like, if you think about it, like, we have modern technology to put lights on the road so you can drive here and drive back safely, relatively safely, with Jacksonville drivers. But beyond that, you're not supposed to just be out and about late at night or doing things late at night. God is meant for us to rest, right? He's meant for you to put your head down and rest. Like, that's part of how God made you. God made you to rest. They're lonely, and so I think that loneliness really comes about with, and I'll share something in a bit about that loneliness, but the longing, they're always longing for friendships in really unique ways that just, when you hear it so much, like empathy, we talked about that last week, you just hear it more and more, and you're like, why am I hearing this? And then you realize, oh, it's because this is a different generation. They're thinking totally different because they have iPhones. What I mean by longing is I'm saying all of us, you could have grown up and you probably who had like a best friend growing up? Somebody you grew up with your whole life. How many of you just idolized having a best friend? I certainly didn't go around thinking, so this is what I mean by this. I didn't go around thinking all the time, I have to have a best friend. I need to have the Ron to my Harry. I need to have the Han to Luke Skywalker. Like, there needs to be a best friend in this picture in RJ's life. I wanted friends. Like, obviously, we all want friendships and community. But how technology is changing how we view community, I'm about to show you, is very different and complex. And for some of you, you're going to be like, what is on the screen? It's RJ's thoughts. And the lostness, what I mean by this is they don't know how to do community, friendship, fellowship, and just relationships. And I honestly think it's not just them, but if we're all honest in the room, it's becoming all of us. You see this with the older generations being on their phones constantly, right? Even grandmas are on Facebook a lot. Not to point any grandmas out in the room being on Facebook, but even grandmas are on Facebook maybe a little bit too much, all right? Like Facebook is really boring. All right? I deleted it, and actually when I deleted it, I felt like my soul left me. Like I was like, oh, this is weird. Like I'm giving up something, part of me. But Facebook is boring. It's this weird, but older generations spend a ton of time on that. And it's even changing older generations who didn't grow up in this way. So we can at least sympathize with them and say, okay, I understand your plight. And even for all of us in the room, we need to rethink technology in our own life. Here's what I want to show you on the screen. I think that's what's next, is friendships in Gen Z. What do I mean by this? And why is this important? I think this actually just struck me like lightning a few weeks ago when I was studying this. A teenager was telling me about this. And this teenager said to me that his mom said to him that your generation is so weird because you never get rid of friends. Does that make sense? So like I had friends in high school. They're no longer my friends. I would not consider them friends. I would say they used to be my friends, but they are definitely no longer my friends, right? And you probably have people like that in your life. But Gen Z, because of technology, there's no way you can get rid of your friends. Anybody you ever meet. You ever think about that? Now you're just so connected with people that you just can't ever be unfriended. Like, you can't really be unfriended. Like, that doesn't happen. And it goes even deeper. Let me just tell you about what's on the screen. So you have this, me and this teenager, as we start talking about, I'm like, I got to write this down. This is gold for the class. And so I was like, let's work through these categories. What are these different friends? So this is RJ's made-up categories. You can work with them or whatever. But situational friends, top left corner. We go top left, down, top bottom, or bottom left, across. So situational friends would be this idea that these are like your top, pretty much like 100 to 150 friends. Okay, so like people you like just have to see. Okay, so and this could be people that you don't see anymore, but you used to go to school together. I saw this a few weeks ago. I had this one, I got this student who I've known him for 5 years, and I'm very close to him. We've done counseling together and discipled him and blah, blah, blah. And then I see him with friends that are from downtown that I'm like, I've never seen you talk to these kids before. But they were talking to each other like they had been really, really great friends. And I was like, what was that all about? Well, it's because they're situational friends. They're good. They want to, at the best, these situational friends are like, you just want to keep good company. On the worst end, these are just shallow acquaintances, but you call it friendship so that you don't offend anybody. The two great principles, these are the two great principles of friendship in Gen Z, in my opinion, is you never make enemies. You're not allowed, and you should never make enemies. And I think that's just unbiblical. Jesus said, pray for your enemies, which assumes what? That you have enemies. That you have them, right? Now, we shouldn't just be making random enemies. You should be, actually, as a Christian, you should be self-controlled in who you make enemies with. It's actually strategically imperative that you make the right enemies. Not everybody's your enemy. But in Gen Z, we abuse that and we say we can never make enemies. And so you're never able to say goodbye to a friendship and close the door on that because you're always connected to them. You always see them online. Even in the situational friends, you still follow each other on Instagram, but you're not friends. Like you're never, a great example is you're never in each other's Instagram feeds, but you see them in their feed. Does that make sense? Like that's situational. The next category is just friends. Okay, so like friends, these are your top 50 to 75, 100. You don't hang out, but you also, again, you're not trying to make enemies. Like these are people. So the situational friends might be people you're in a room sometimes with. These are people you're in a room on a regular basis with that you kind of don't like. Like you kind of don't like, but you can't call them anything other than friend. And then you go down to good friends in the bottom left. These are your top 1 to 30. You communicate regularly, but you don't hang out with them alone. So what would this look like? This would look like a teenager, maybe like a senior and a freshman, and they relationally in the youth group, they get along really well. They're really friendly. I see this all the time. They're really friendly in the youth group. They laugh. In community group, or in groups, they're like talking and they're bouncing off each other and saying great stuff, but they don't hang out. Like they don't hang out outside of time together. It's a good time when you're together, but we don't hang out outside of that. And again, it's because these are your good friends, and we're moving deeper and deeper. So then you have close friends. These can be co-ed. Okay, so these are co-ed friends. These could be a guy and a girl. This could be, and the best way to think about this, the student said it blew, when he said it, I was like, man, I'm dealing with youngsters, he was like, you can know who your good friends, your close friends are. He distinguished between good and close. So he said, you can know who your close friends are by who's on their Instagram feed. And I was like, wow, that is crazy. I'm never on Instagram, but apparently I don't know who anybody's friends with anymore. I don't know anything. I just am observing, and I just think everybody's friendly, but it's because of this. Everybody is friends, but they're not friends. There's drawbacks to this. And then you get this is the category that for years it's bugged me, but I've never understood why until a few weeks ago, is this best friend category. Is this idea that you always have to have Harry and Ron together. You have to have, I love Harry Potter. I think there's so much good in it, even though she's not a Christian writing it. But the story of it is this wonderful story. But think about Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. If you don't know, they're just best friends at a boarding school in England. And they happen to do witchcraft every once in a while. But regardless of that, you got these two best friends. And the only thing that ever drives them apart is drama together, but then the story resolves when they come back together and they're friends again. So and this is what I mean by this. Everyone in Gen Z has to have a best friend. They're always seeking after the best friend. Okay, so again, and here's the thing. You don't want to be Ron, you want to be Harry, right? You don't want to be Ron Weasley, who doesn't get any titles of any books. You want to be Harry Potter, right? You want to be the guy who gets the books and the deals. You want to be you're the main character. Who's your sidekick? Who's your Robin to your Batman, right? That, in my best estimation, is how, maybe they've never thought about that and you could disagree on this, but I think this is how Gen Z views friendships. And I think there's a lot of drawbacks to this. Not to be negative, but the first one we said, you never make enemies. You never make enemies. And again, we talked about that. I'm not saying you just go around and like blast people, but this idea that we just can't make enemies, like we said, is just unbiblical. But then the other thing is it's people-pleasing everybody. You're always people-pleasing. And this is where, I don't know what's coming next. Yes. You never fully know and trust who your friends are. What do I mean by that? Think about what it means if this is your life. If you're thinking about friendships in this way, instead of like the old way that we just were like, me and this person, personality-wise, really get along and we talk and I'd love to hang out with them and we get together and we play video games late at night and we're just a bunch of high school boys and we're just friends, right? Like, that's how we used to think about it. And then like I graduate, he goes to one college, I go to another. Maybe we stay in contact if he's faithful and a Christian, or we lose contact. You know, like it's whatever. It's more of like who's present right there that we're seeing friendships and relationships. This generation doesn't see it that way. They see it different, and it's all about people pleasing. And so think about if that's your life, how can you trust people when problems arise in the group or in between two friends? Think about what that means. So let's say me and my friend, we'll call him Tyler. Tyler's my brother, but my friend Tyler and I get into an argument with some girl in the youth group, and we're both high school boys. And I get into an argument with some girl in the youth group. What it used to be is like I would be dating this girl, and I break up with her, and then her friends hang out, and they stick together, and my friends stick together with me, right? That's just, all of us in this room, that's probably how you think about it too. But think about what it is when you have this spider web of friendship, and everybody's connected. Tyler's my best friend. I break up with Charlotte over here. Tyler now has the option. Do I stick with RJ, one person, or do I succumb to the pressure of moving over and leaving him to be with everybody else? Does that make sense? Because you're always under this guise that if I'm loyal to this person, my best friend, if I'm loyal to them, then I'm going to ostracize myself from literally everybody else in this group. And that's not a good thing. I think that's really toxic in a lot of ways, right? Think about that. You never truly know who your close friends are. You don't know who your brothers are. When I dated a girl in college, it was that same thing. I broke up with this girl, and my boys, I mean, it was like classic. It felt like the 80s, but like we were at a Bible college, and so we were walking to chapel, me and my boys. It's right after the breakup. I broke up with her, so I was feeling okay. And I'm walking to chapel. It was coming. I'm walking with my boys, and I turn the corner with my boys, and her girls come around the corner, and it's awkward, okay? Now, if we were Gen Z, how this would work is I don't know who my boys would be. Or my boys would come around the corner, and they're texting the girls in the other group, and they're bad-mouthing me, and they're bad-mouthing her, right? There's no true loyalty at the end of the day. And listen, I think we can all agree, like, even if you choose sides and a year later you recognize, I made a bad decision choosing that side, I think we can all respect that you were at least loyal to something, right? And I think this is one area of Gen Z that I'm even growing in and thinking about is, okay, we need to talk about friendships and community because none of you are loyal to anybody. How can you trust anybody? Who do you trust to actually to confess sin to? I will never confess my sin to somebody because I don't trust them. This picture, by the way, this is AI generated. This picture, let's say these two guys, they're best friends, and I confess my sin to him of looking at pornography. This guy could go and blab about that to the whole youth group because he's got this info and he's got something on me now that he can use to promote himself, which is, again, sinful, but it's this idea of, well, if somebody's bad-mouthing me and, oh, well, yeah, he did tell me about this horrible thing he's been doing. It's just very easy to throw people under the bus because you don't have this deep friendship with people. You don't have this loyalty to anybody. But then there's this other thing that's been going on. So in the old days, it used to be this idea of FOMO, which is like fear of missing out. The bigger problem that I get so annoyed with our teens is the FOBO problem. So fear of better options or offers, right? So, man, this happens with summer camp too. I mean, you plan this huge event for everybody to come to, and the whole time, these students, I'm having to coax them. I'm telling them over and over, like, stop being dumb and sign up. It's going to be the best week of your little lives. You have a short lifespan thus far. I'm telling you, this week compared to everything else you've experienced is going to be amazing. But they're waiting and waiting and waiting to see, is there something better that I can jump to go over to? Is there a better party I can go to than RJ's party? Can I jump over here? And that, again, gets back to this lack of loyalty, right? Like, there's no real loyalty between us. FOMO is still a thing because, our youth group, compared to the downtown youth group for a while, we were growing, and we used to average, when I first started, we had 8 kids. We average 65 now, so my life is much different. And there was a period of time where our group was going from 25 to 30 to about 45 to 55. And that transition was really hard because everybody was realizing groups of friends are just going to have to start forming. And that's okay. Not everybody's going to have to be friends and best friends in the whole room. We're actually going to have to pair off, and it's okay. We still have to love the other groups in the room, but there's just going to be pairing off. So what ended up happening with the fear of missing out is you'd see, these people hung out without me, and they didn't invite me to the party, and now I feel left out, and I feel lonely. And that's where the social media drives the depression and the anxiety and the lack of, and the loneliness. And it's just all the spinning around of you just never truly know your community. You just never truly know who's got your back. And that's a really dangerous thing, I think, for the future that the church has to really grab hold of and say, we have to be the best at community. We have to be the best in the world at what fellowship and community look like. Relationship. What does it really look like to confess my sins to my brothers or sisters, and lay it all on the line and trust the Lord, and even entrusting this information that I'm giving to my pastor or to this older man or this older woman in my life, and confess that and actually give that over to them and trust them with that and trust the Lord with that information I've given. As the church, we need to grow in this and be ready for this, because this is going to be the future. Is this idea of, I don't know who my true friends are. I don't know who these people are. And then the second truth is that they're overstimulated by entertainment. I've been seeing this more with Gen Alpha than Gen Z, but Gen Alpha especially, they're just overstimulated by constant entertainment. Okay, so we talked about the algorithm, but part of this is you're watching, so TikTok promotes at least the idea that you can get on TikTok and you'll never see the same video twice. Can you imagine that? I mean, that's a guarantee. That's an amazing guarantee that you'll never see the same video twice. So think about the constant stream of entertainment that's just constantly flowing through somebody. And what I've seen with students, especially the younger ones, like the freshmen and below, is it's hard to get them excited about anything. Anybody heard of the artist Forrest Frank? You know who that is? Less in the room than I thought. Okay, well, my family, I'm not a big fan of Forrest Frank, but my family loves him. My son does the dance. It's just, it's stuck in my head. And he's this Christian artist. He just came to Jacksonville. I actually think he's really great. His lyrics are really, really great. He's a typical young Gen Z, Gen Alpha artist, though. So what I mean by that is you can tell this guy, Forrest Frank, so you should go and listen to him after this. His voice never changes like volume. He never gets excited in the song. It's stable all the way through. And that's just Gen Z. It's like they're just not excited about anything. That you can't get them like you and I would have gotten excited. My kids get like through the moon excited over like sugar and ice cream. You couldn't get these kids that are overstimulated by entertainment excited for anything. Well, why? Because they're watching the most entertaining things that have ever been created on loop over and over and over again. And there's something new over and over and over again. So that's this next thing just you see it, you probably see it even in your grandchildren. And we really need to teach people, what does it look like to actually experience joy, to experience true joy and not just experience entertainment. And then there's this normalized social awkwardness, that they can't look you in the eye. They have a hard time talking to strangers or adults, except the 1% that are very, 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 very outward and are ready to go express and talk to people. Most Gen Z, they have, and frankly, a lot of people in our society, not just Gen Z, but there's a social awkwardness. We have a hard time connecting and looking at people in the eye. And even when I'm teaching the youth group, if I'm looking at somebody in the eye as a pastor, I'm not meaning like I'm trying to make a point at you, but like I look at Gen Z and they look at me, and you can tell there's like fear in their expressed, and then they like look away as quickly as they can and just hope that I'm not looking at them. Maybe next time I just need to stare at them until they look back at me and see what they do. But anyway, basic communication, eye contact, active listening, asking follow-up questions, these are skills that they're just going to have to learn because they've never been taught that. Like these are things that they're not having to learn. None of them are having to learn because they could just text. One quick example. One time I met with a student. I was discipling him, and he said he wasn't going to date this girl that we all knew. He liked this one girl. And I was like, that's great. And I was discipling him. 2 weeks later, guess what he's doing? He's dating the girl. I'm like, hey, buddy, I'd love to meet again and let's talk. I'm not mad. I just want to like talk about something. You told me you were going to do this, and now you're doing this. And I told my wife after, I was like, that was the best counsel I've ever given anybody. I'm not prideful, but man, I was feeling good after me. I was like, this kid loved what I had to say. I was asking him questions, and he was saying, yeah, he agreed, and he thought I was right, and I was helping him see how this relationship, just some safeguards to be safe in this relationship and not make sinful choices. Like I was just helping him with basic things. And in the meeting, I thought, man, we connected on a level that I was just so excited for him. And then 2 days later, I was like, there's some homework. I told him, I was like, hey, I want you to do this, and I want you to tell me about it in a couple days once you're done with it. And I was just texting him just to catch up and say, hey, like, were you able to do what we had talked about? And I got the longest, angriest text message in student ministry I've gotten in I don't remember the last time I've gotten one that angry, where it was like, basically, I didn't know anything I was talking about. He didn't agree with anything I said, and he doesn't want to ever meet again. And I actually haven't met with him since then. He's gone off and graduated and whatever. And it struck me in the moment. I'm like, what? And it was because of this. Because in the moment, he couldn't tell me, he didn't want to tell me that he disagreed with me. He didn't want to argue. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to go at this hard thing. And I'm telling you, I've had experience after experience after experience where over and over and over again, these teens sometimes, or even like 19, 20-year-olds, I'm sitting with them, and I feel like in this meeting it's going really well, and the next thing you know, it's like, I'm just going to go do this other thing. So that's another part of Gen Z. I'm going to go through this next part really quickly, but any questions so far on community? Let's keep moving. I'm going to have more times for questions. The revenge of the pagans is what I'm calling this one. Gender fluid till you drown. Okay, so this generation, we all know this. Like, you've known this probably for a while, but this generation is identifying as LGBTQ plus higher than any generation that's ever existed before. And actually, these are numbers very recently of the Survey Center for American Life that women, specifically young women, 30% are in LGBTQ plus identifying. And again, I think we've talked about this with the algorithm. I think this is coming back to the algorithm, technology. But you see this mass scale of growth here. And that does something to a generation too when you see this, again, this empathy mixed with the algorithm and technology and mixed with the community that you just can't. You don't want to say something that might hurt somebody's feelings, because if I get them upset and they badmouth me to all these people, I lose everybody and then I'm alone. And so now we really can't stop it. It seems at least right now that we can't stop it. The next one is delayed adulthood or no adulthood at all. This one is interesting. I don't know if I said this last time, but 40 to 50% of women, if nothing changes in America, will be single with no intention of marriage or having children by 2030. By 2030, I'll say that again. By 2030, in America, if nothing changes, women ages 20, I think it was 20 or 21, to 42, so childbearing years, that 45 to 50% of women, if nothing changes, will be single with no intention of marriage or having children by the end of this decade. 5 more years to go. This generation is going the way of singleness, and really, if you see in the scriptures, you see this a little bit too with eunuchs, right? Like there's eunuchs in the scriptures that have been deformed or hurt or castrated, where they're not able to be in marriage. And you're seeing this in a different way, but it's without any desire to get married, any desire to have children, any desire to pursue dating relationships. If you look at the stats too, this generation, they're the most likely, they'll look at pornography and explicit images and videos, but they won't have sex. Now, I don't want them to have sex, but what I'm saying is that they're not going out and actually having physical relationships. They would rather have online relationships. And it's Gen Z's growing in this. We saw this with millennials starting that. Now it's even getting growing. Again, I think, just hold on with me. I don't think it's all the end of the world yet. And the question that researchers are asking is, will Gen Z embrace marriage ever again like other generations? You know, other generations, you go off to college and you're young and you're single, and then you meet a girl and you get married and you have kids, and then you move into the next stage of life. Because of technology, because of advancements, because of our society, we're delaying adulthood almost to the point where we just don't even want to do that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say something even maybe farther than that. And let me just get into the psychology of it a little bit. or at least the thought process, not psychology, but the thought process of it. I think that men don't want to get married because they see a world that hates them, because we live in a world that truly says we hate men, that we think men are toxic, and we don't want them. Somebody said this to me is the craziest stat I've ever heard in my life. Okay, so I've said a lot of stats in here that are crazy, but this one's crazy. 69% of divorces in America end because the woman initiates it. 69%. You ready for the next stat that actually blew my mind? I was like, I had to go look this up. This is crazy. Out of that 69%, college-educated women initiate 90% of those divorces. So if you're a young guy and you're seeing those stats, why would you want to get married? Why would you want to get married? If you're just a mature guy that in any other generation you'd be a great guy to get married to, you've got a good job, you're nice, you're a gentleman, maybe you're a Christian and you love the Lord and you're growing in godliness. You are being much more careful these days because you understand, and I think in a good way, the dangers of marrying somebody who could take everything from you. In a society that hates you, why would you marry a woman, have kids with that woman, and the next day, because of technology and influences, she might wake up and want to divorce you and take the kids and your money. And so why would you do that? So that's one side I think men are thinking through, is even reevaluating, is this worth it? And then on the other side, you've got women who are on the other side saying, why would I want to get married? I'll just have a career and be independent and drink my wine and have my cats and dogs and live the career lifestyle because that's fulfilling. Nothing against having cats and dogs, by the way. But I'll have this lifestyle and I'll be fulfilled in that. And I'll be fulfilled in this lifestyle. And there's this popular video style that goes out there, like a theme in this one style of videos that go out there on like TikTok and whatever. And it's these women who are like 35 and older who are weeping in these videos saying they're tragically sad because they've realized their careers are not going to satisfy them. They hate their jobs, they hate their life, and all they want to do is get married and have kids. Like there are millions of videos being made with what I just said. And so the question will be, will Zoomers embrace marriage or ever get married? Those are the stats right now. Let's keep moving. I don't think it's end of the world yet, okay? And I got some time. I got to go quick. Blasphemy laws. All I mean by this is cancel culture, right? I think this is older Gen Z specifically too. Blasphemy laws are this idea that if you speak against the religion, like in a Muslim country, you get excommunicated, lose your job, even killed and sent out of the country. Blasphemy laws and cancel culture, I would say, are synonymous, right? So this idea of canceling somebody because they say, maybe even want to cancel me tonight, but you cancel somebody because they say something inflammatory, and instead of dealing with the argument, we just cancel the person altogether. That's what I mean by blasphemy laws. They're back, baby. At least they were. I think, so I want to end this, series by actually getting positive for a moment. So I actually want to get positive for a moment. I think there was something in our culture that happened just a few months ago with Donald Trump's victory that I think is going to be a signal of change. Now, I don't mean there's something in Trump's win specifically that changes culture, but I think there was something that happened in November when Trump won that was that was happening in the culture, and the politics were a reflection of that. I think it was, I forget the guy's name, I'm going to misquote him, but politics is downstream of culture. It's this old conservative term, right? So politics are downstream of culture. And my thought is, something seems, I don't know if you agree with this or think this or see this, but I think there's a vibe or something's just changed since November. In our society. Even in Florida, a very conservative state, I've been here since 2020, so I've been through 2020 election and the 2024 election, and there's just something different even in our area, but around culture in general. And I want to talk about those three things that I'm just thinking of, and I'm positive on. Okay, I'm very positive on this. I'm not really a positive guy, but I'm a positive man because Christ has won. And he has shown his victory at the cross. Colossians 1 says this over and over. Colossians 2 says this as well. He says in Colossians 1 that he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He's the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn of the dead, and that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. So I think as we conclude this series on generations, we can't look at generations and point and say, the boomers got it wrong. Everything about the boomers is wrong. We can't look at Zoomers and say, well, these youngsters, they're hopeless. There are sins, in particular sins in each generation. I also think that in our nation, we've been also experiencing satanic, demonic forces, spiritual warfare on our society and in our world in greater ways than previously. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think we're all waking up to that. Like, our nation, America, is not what it used to be. This isn't the nation that was holy and righteous right after World War II. That there's something different. In 100 years, we've seen a total drastic change. And so I think what we have to have in mind when we think about the generations is, first off, that generations do have particular sins. Two, there are demonic, dark forces pressing on the culture and on these generations. But we also need to remember that Jesus is reconciling to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven. That includes America. That includes China. That includes Iran. That includes Great Britain. That includes every nation and every person and everything in this universe. God is reconciling all things to himself, and he's making peace. And you see in Colossians as well that he is destroying and has destroyed the principalities and the powers of this world. That he is king. There's nobody else king of kings. He is king of kings. So what do I mean by some thoughts from Trump's win? I think that the polarization that's going on, it's normal and it's here to stay until something truly changes it. I don't know what that thing is. I'm not going to speculate. But so you just see this polarization in our culture. Gen Alpha is going to be influenced by this. I've said this at the beginning when I started teaching 3 weeks ago in this class, that Gen Alpha is this generation growing up in either a very, very, very conservative home or a very, very liberal home. There's no moderation anymore. And frankly, I think I love it. I think that's a good thing. I think we should really understand these differences. It's going to be hard for us to have a nation together when we want to kill babies in the womb, right? Like, how do you have a nation together when we want to kill our children in our generation? How do you do that? How are you supposed to do that? You just can't. So these are irreconcilable differences. But there's actually even more polarization going on than First Meets the Eye. I was talking to some of the guys after this last week, but there's polarization in men and women that are really interesting. And I won't go too deep into it. Look at this graph. The blue is men, the red is women. Going up is liberal, down is conservative. So I'm just talking about ideology and worldview at this point. Not saying all the men going conservative are Christian. What I'm saying is there's an ideological worldview change happening in our society. This graph, so that's South Korea. The men in South Korea they're super conservative over there. That's the U.S. You see our women are spiking. Germany, you see it going at least progressive. The U.K., they're messed up anyway. That's why we fought a war with them twice and beat them twice and then saved their butts twice. But anyway, the end of the graph is 2020. Okay, so that was 2020. I think this has exploded even more so. I think the shift between each other is even more so. And I think one of the main reasons why is technology. And I think it's also environmental differences too with men and women. So look at this graph. Currently enrolled in college or graduate school. I don't remember what year this was. I think this was this year or last year. 56% of colleges are women and 44% are men. Now, I think there's two things going on. I think the first thing is that women are drawn to some of the degrees that are out there, that from psychology to counseling to the medical field, where they're actually, I believe God, in a wonderful way, endows women with this gift of nurturing and care for people, right? So of course they would want to go into a field like that. Men, on the other hand, we've been going to college for a long time, but now a lot of men are waking up and saying, why do I need to go to college? I can go get a 9-month electrical certification degree, or like certification, and I can work with my hands, because I'd rather do that anyway, because it's boring to just sit in an office all day. I can work with my hands, get my hands dirty, and I can make $150,000 in a couple years, because nobody else is willing to be an electrician or a plumber these days. You can make a killing being a plumber these days, because nobody else wants to do it. Everybody just wants to sit on their phone. And so I think men are moving away from that. Women are moving more towards that. So think about what that means. If I think I'm in friendly company here. But think about the ideological state of our colleges today. Are they more conservative, more liberal? Very liberal. And I think that what's happening in most of these colleges is that men are going there too, and there's more, it's not really education for most of it, it's more indoctrination of a worldview. I think most rational people can at least see there's a difference in education styles today than there was 25, 40 years ago. But then also, coming back to the algorithm, is that men and women's algorithms are pushing them further and further into their camps. Okay, and here's where I think it's happening for men, and this is where I'm hopeful. I think that the best way, one of the ways you can start discipling somebody is by sending them really powerful and theologically sound YouTube videos, okay? Because, well, let me say it this way. If I have a student and he's starting to really get into Christianity and on fire for the Lord, and I have students like this right now that they're getting on fire, they want to share the gospel with people, so they're starting to watch apologetic videos. Well, think about what that means if you just keep watching apologetic videos. The algorithm is going to keep pushing more and more of these videos on you, and as they start realizing that the West was created by Christians, that we have such power in history in the West, in the culture of Western civilization, is built on Christianity, that men are waking up and saying, I want this. This is what I want. And did I put it in the next graph? I don't have it in the next graph. There's a graph that just came, or there's a stat that just came out. It's very encouraging. It looks just kind of like this one, but it's actually not this anymore, but it's actually that men are now the ones going to church. Men are drawn, young men specifically, are drawn to churches now more than ever before. And I think it's because men are living with this trade, with using their hands, watching more masculine videos. They're working out, they're watching history, they're reading theology and seeing theology, that their algorithm is being discipled unto Christ. And that algorithm isn't even discipling them. And it's moving them not just Christless conservative, but into a conservative Christian camp. And that gives me really encouraged. Here's why. If you got your Bible, Exodus chapter 1. Exodus chapter 1. Why is it important? Why is it important? And why is RJ so excited right now that the men are the ones that I think the Lord is gonna turn Satan and his tools that he's been using in our culture on its head, and the same algorithm that was doing horrible things to people is actually maybe the same algorithm that the Lord is going to use to bring about men to reclaim American Western civilization. What happens in Exodus 1? Who does Pharaoh, you guys look at it, who does Pharaoh try to kill? Does he try to kill the baby girls or the baby boys? We all know the story. He tries to kill baby boys. When Jesus is born, which is this is a shadow of what happens to Jesus. When Jesus is born, who does Herod try to kill? All the baby girls or the baby boys? Kills all the baby boys. Why? Because when a king is threatened by another nation, if he can control those men, then he can win. Because men were built to be warriors, to fight and to stand firm, to act like men and to fight for truth and godliness and beauty in the Lord, and then to raise up families and care and protect and defend and provide for them. And so my hope is actually that in a similar way of Exodus and a similar way of the New Testament, the Lord is going to raise up young men who are waking up and saying, I need to get my life right before the Lord. I am not a Christian, and I'm going to submit my life to Christ. And here's the thing. I'm going to go a step further, okay? What the algorithm is teaching, I'll end on this. What their algorithm is teaching, what we used to grow up in this room hearing is that it's not about religion, it's about a relationship. What these young guys are wanting is the religion again. And I actually think in a good way. I think their desires are good. And what do I mean by that? They're wanting something that's greater than themselves. That's actually the videos they're starting to watch. They're saying, wow, I used to think terrible things about the Crusaders. And I thought they were just all bad guys and they were evil men. Now, not all of them are perfect, but you go and read about the Crusaders and there were a lot of them that were extremely godly. And that history has just been kept from you. And as a young man, you're like, they've lied to me, my teachers lied to me, my parents don't know about this, so I'm going to dive more into this. I want to get more into something greater than myself. And as the church, we need to push them to Christ Jesus. Christ Jesus, Him, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and what He has for their life, and growing up to be men who love their wives and their children, who actually have families. Like, that is the future. It's actually just the basic things at the end of the day. What is a man? What is a woman? What is a husband? What is a father? What is a wife? What is a mother? The only truth that can teach you what those things and the answer to those things are is Christ and His word alone, right, Christian? Nowhere else can teach you these things. And so as Christians, we need to embrace this and teach and encourage the younger generations to, if you're not going to read the Bible, send them YouTube videos and have them watch videos that are by faithful pastors preaching the gospel hard, and the young men will respond. And I think that will be a good thing. It might take a few more years, but I'm hopeful for the next generation. And the question is going to be, will this good vibe that RJ's talking about, will it hold? Or is this just a temporary lull until more bad things come? I don't think so. I think the Lord is going to raise up a new army, a new generation. And with that said, let me pray,